Hello, everyone. Welcome in. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We would
Well,
love to know where you're tuning in from, so please use the chat. I am in sunny St. Petersburg, Florida.
Mm.
and we are not in a sunny area. We are
Not
in
today.
freezing cold New York City. Well, it's cold for April 30th. Atlanta sounds
Awesome.
better to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome,
Ooh, California.
California. Welcome,
Right.
Baltimore. Very cool.
Okay,
Well, I'm
Baltimore.
going to
Well,
go
maybe you
ahead
can bring
and,
some sunshine here.
yes.
Oh, I see. Okay, a fellow Michigander. And like, oh, Columbus, Ohio. Man. Just kidding.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kick us off. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ensure Fitness Group webinar series. I'm Shannon with IFG, and I'm super excited to be your co-host today. If you're new to Ensure Fitness Group, we're a leading provider of comprehensive liability insurance for fitness professionals across the United States. Our coverage extends to personal trainers, Pilates instructors, and a wide range of other fitness modalities. But we don't stop at insurance. We also offer exclusive member benefits like discounts on continuing education opportunities, products, and more, all available through our member portal. To explore everything we have to offer, visit insurefitness.com. Quick housekeeping tips. Reminder that today's webinar will run for approximately 60 minutes and it is being recorded. The recording will be emailed to everyone within 24 to 48 hours. We encourage you to ask questions, so feel free to use the question and answer feature, and we will be monitoring that throughout. And we will also be reserving the last 10 minutes for your Q&A session. We can jump in. The topic of today's webinar is how to confidently support pregnant members in your Pilates classes. Please join me in welcoming our guests, Brittany Citron and Carolyn Appel, founders of ProNatal Fitness, a global leader in pre and postnatal education and the creators of the #1 recommended certification in the United States. Welcome, Brittany and Carolyn, and thank you so much for tuning into the Ensure Fitness webinar series.
Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you.
I'm Brittany. I'm one of the founders. Carolyn is my co-founder, and she's actually going to be taking you through the bulk of the presentation today. I'm just going to do a quick introduction. As Shannon already mentioned, we're the largest provider of pre and postnatal fitness education in the US. And so unlike other companies in the pre and postnatal fitness space, our focus is entirely on you, the health and fitness professional, and that's really been shaped by both of our collective experiences and just our belief that that's where we can have the greatest impact. The more professionals we can educate, the greater impact we all can have. And we have been a partner with IFG. We're a relatively new partner just since 2025. And as Shannon mentioned, we are most known for our pre and postnatal fitness specialist certification. I will cover that at the very end if you're interested in learning more about that. But we have launched other courses in this space, all focused on the pre and postnatal population. And so we had a few years ago launched a course specifically for instructors teaching in a group setting that need to be able to support this population, but in a way that manages everything else they have to do as an instructor and in a way that stays true to the format they're teaching. And then in 2025, given the explosion in Pilates that I'm sure you are all aware of, we launched a course specifically for Pilates instructors, and we will be pulling from that content to talk through today. Now, I will say that this course and the content that we talk through today are more designed for instructors teaching in a group class setting because that's where we've found instructors who are having the greatest challenge because as you're probably well aware, almost every doctor out there is telling their patients during pregnancy, do Pilates, do yoga. So you have all these pregnant members showing up to your classes and supporting them can feel really challenging. No one knows this better than us, the degree of conflicting information in this space. It is enough to make anyone's head spin. And seems like every person, every pregnancy is different. And there are far too many rules, it seems like, to memorize. So it almost makes it seem like accommodating this population within a group class setting is like too hard to do without it completely disrupting your flow. And that's what we want to really kind of debunk today. So, what we want to talk through is 4 outdated myths that we think are making your life harder than it needs to be as an instructor, and arm you with the latest research and facts so that you can more easily and confidently guide these members in your classes or in your sessions. So, even though the content we discuss today is with that group instructor in mind, every single thing we talk about is applicable if you are doing just private sessions as well. So you will get value either way. And at the end, if this is something that interests you, I am going to share more about the ProNatal Fitness education. IFG members, if you happen to be an IFG member, have discounted access to our education. So with that, I am going to, turn it over to Carolyn to take you, to introduce yourself and take you through the rest of the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Brittany. I believe I just need to get
Do I need to stop share? We're
access
learning
to...
logistics here. I need to stop share. And then
Yes, and I think I need to be, okay, excellent.
there we go. We got it. Zoom
We're
without
getting it.
Zoom.
Okay, let me just get my slides in presenter mode. Hi, here we are. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And as Brittany mentioned, my name is Carolyn Appel. I am the Chief Content Officer for ProNatal Fitness, and I have been in the industry for quite a bit now, over 2 decades, and I absolutely love the field of movement, which is why I went to graduate school for the movement sciences. I'm a real nerd, and I love that I get to nerd out with all of you today. And one of the things that brings me here is, as Brittany mentioned, the frustration and the myths that can often crop up around the pre and postnatal journey. And I didn't really encounter this until I had personal experience with it when I got pregnant with my son, who is now almost 11. But even as an athlete growing up and competing competitively through college, I was really struggling to find the truth and the evidence and to quiet the noise. So it really was quite frustrating because, as someone who is relatively well educated in this field, I was still having trouble. And it made me think about all of the people who don't have the benefit of a science background, and how do they wade through this? And how do you wade through this? So we wanted to create education that would help debunk these myths that are likely swirling around, however, consciously or subconsciously, that may be holding you back from providing the best support for this population. And so we want to cover some of these myths today, and hopefully we can just clear some space and freedom and give you more confidence to work with this population. So before we get started on the content, I just want to encourage you to really give yourself the gift of uninterrupted time and remove any other distractions, close your other windows. And if questions come up for you during the presentation, please put them in the Q&A. We will absolutely get to as many as possible at the end of the presentation. I'd like to offer you as much resources as I have available in our time together. But hopefully I'll make the case clear enough that these myths will be really obviously debunked for you. So in terms of the 4 myths, we're going to be covering the idea that pregnancy does not equate to fragility. And this is a really big one, I think, that tends to color our perspective taking when it comes to working with this population. The second myth that we're going to bust today is that when pregnant, one should avoid all core work. The third myth is going to be to avoid supine positions after the first trimester. And then the last myth we're going to bust is that prenatal modifications will simply ruin your class flow. So let's dive into the first one. And the outdated beliefs are those saying that when pregnant, the body is in a weakened and vulnerable state, and that exercise adds more stress and could potentially threaten the baby's well-being. And so the thinking was that we should minimize exertion in order to prevent harming the baby. And I will say that this was all based on fear and not actual data. But luckily, in the 1980s, we started doing research on pregnant women, and we came to some really beneficial conclusions, which I will share in a moment. So here are the facts, okay? Pregnancy does place unprecedented stresses on the body, but the body needs to be strong in order to manage those stresses. So it's not a question of this thing, these changes happening to the body, and we are just at the mercy of these changes. No, if we're strong, we can meet them head on and still perform well in our day-to-day lives. This research that started happening again in the 1980s, 1990s, it really started ramping up, and it showed that moderate to even higher intensity activity is not only safe, but incredibly beneficial for both the parent and the baby. So it wasn't opinion and fear, it was actual hard evidence saying, no, this is safe and really beneficial for the outcomes, not only for the parent, but also the baby at birth and into the adolescent and adulthood of that child. So the more we can create a nourishing environment that remains active for the parent, we are actually impacting the health and well-being of future generations. This is an incredible opportunity if we can maximize what we do during this prenatal period. So one of the things that we are very passionate about at ProNatal Fitness is keeping these people strong, because what we're trying to do is help mitigate the changes that come during pregnancy to the strength to weight ratio. And I want to just talk a moment about what this means and the implications of it. So I'm going to show you a graph that's going to give you an illustration of the trends of what happens to someone during pregnancy. And the numbers are really not relevant here. I just want you to pay attention to the overall trends. Okay, so you can see in this graph here that we have two lines, and this is spanning the time of the 9 months of pregnancy. So on the left side, you can see we begin at month 1, and then we progress to the end of the full 9 months. Now, in the pink line on top, we are looking at the slow and increase of body weight throughout that 9 months. So obviously during pregnancy, we're going to be gaining weight. That's what's supposed to happen, right? So that number is going up. Now, the blue line is representative of one's strength number, which for our purposes, the number itself is not important. But the thinking, if we were to take on those outdated beliefs, which were to minimize stress to the body and to decrease the amount of work that we're doing, well, that would mean that our strength levels would decrease throughout pregnancy. And the problem is that when we are at our heaviest, we're going to be at our weakest. And this disparity, this alteration of that strength to weight ratio is what can lead to movement compensations because we simply are not strong enough to handle the weight gain. And these movement compensations compounded over time can lead to discomforts and pain and injury. So that's why we believe that building strength is a key focus of prenatal training. And Pilates is a terrific modality that is strength building at its core, right? So we want to try to use this modality to help influence our clients to stay strong and build strength. So the key takeaways of our first myth that we hopefully have just busted wide open is that the body endures tremendous stress during pregnancy, and staying active and building strength are the keys to managing these stresses. Pregnant members are not glass dolls and they can handle challenges. So if someone walks into your class and is pregnant, you don't have to shy away. You don't have to be in fear of harming them. Obviously, you want to make sure that you're matching the challenge to their level of ability at that moment, but there isn't this automatic thinking that, oh, I really have to just take it easy on them. Okay, they can manage the challenge. That's what we're built to do. Now, moving on to the second myth, which is avoiding all core work during pregnancy. Now, this is an outdated belief because the thinking was that since the belly increases pressure in the core, that will stretch and strain the abdominal tissues. Therefore, core work would stress the abs even more, so we should avoid it altogether. This was the thinking up until more recently, because we look at the facts and they lead us to a different conclusion. Now, pregnancy does increase what is called intra-abdominal pressure, or IAP. Now, intra-abdominal pressure is something that we all have in our abdominal cavity of varying degrees, depending on the task that we're performing. So we actually need a certain amount of pressure in this cavity to help stabilize the spine, to be able to transfer forces as we're lifting and pushing and pulling and carrying, right? But pregnancy, because of the added mass in that cavity from baby, the placental fluids, and added all of that mass, pushes that intra-abdominal pressure forward and outward onto that abdominal wall. Over time, this elevated pressure can thin and even weaken the connective tissue. And this can lead to the left and right sides of that rectus abdominis muscle, that outermost core layer, to widen. This leads to some degree of what is called diastasis recti, or DR for short. We're just going to make it real simple here. Don't worry about all those syllables. This leads to diastasis because this pressure, as you can see here in this image, is pushing forward, and it's a natural adaptation for the body to widen to allow for baby to grow. We need room, right, to carry baby as it gets bigger. So this is a completely natural adaptation, and some degree of DR is found in virtually 100% of people who are pregnant. Okay, so this is not something we're trying to avoid. This is not something that we can prevent. This is not something that indicates that the person did anything wrong. However, it's important to avoid exercises that further increase intra-abdominal pressure. And that's really the part that we can control. So while the belly does increase that intra-abdominal pressure, there are many safe core exercises that will not add more pressure. So we talk about regulating this intra-abdominal pressure with one fundamental move, and we call that 360-degree breathing. We believe this is the most effective core exercise that you can do, not only with prenatal clients, but with all of your clients and members. So let's talk about this breathing style and really isolate what we're talking about when we say the core, because I've mentioned this term and we all may have different ideas of what the core is. You can define it in different ways. But for our purposes, we're talking about a structure that we term the core canister. And when we think of this structure, we're looking at the deepest, most layer interior in the abdominal cavity. And I'm going to use my water bottle here just to give you a visual demo of this canister that exists within all of us. Let's see if I can get the blur to go away. Okay, maybe here. Okay, so essentially the top of the canister is your diaphragm. Okay, so that's right up above the top here, kind of at the base of the thoracic cavities into the abdominal cavity, the top of the abdominal cavity. Then at the bottom of the core, we have our pelvic floor, and that's the support system that provides this hammock to keep our organs in place and allow for baby to come out. And then this whole structure providing the wall, the support, is your transverse abdominis. So all of the muscles have independent functions, but really what we're trying to do is use them together as one unit. And we do that with this style of breathing called 360 breathing. Now, I'm going to talk you through how to perform it, and you are absolutely welcome to join in on practicing it. I find that generally when you are experiencing it yourself, you have a much easier time and you're more effective when you're teaching it to others. So if you're sitting, if you're standing, it doesn't matter the position, come join us for some 360 breathing, okay? Now what you're gonna do, you're gonna set yourself up with two hands and we're gonna make L's in your hands. And you're gonna place them at the base of the rib cage, so your lower ribs. You will find that the thumb is in the back side of the rib cage and your fingertips are in the front, okay? Now the idea here is that on the inhale, we're going to inhale through the nose and we're going to expand the rib cage 360 degrees. So you're inhaling, and I really want you to fill out this part of the L. The back side of the body is often where people have the most trouble expanding and finding that space. So you're going to inhale and expand 360 degrees, and then you're going to exhale through pursed lips until there's no air left. And on that exhale, you're going to feel the ribs come together. You're going to feel a tautness in your belly the longer you keep that breath going. And that style of breathing is really a beautiful core exercise that is helping to regulate that intra-abdominal pressure. So I'm going to show you a video example of this with Megan here, who is in her third trimester at this stage of the game. And we're going to see her take a few breath cycles. And I want you to notice a couple of things, which I will talk you through. Okay. So we're going to take an inhale and expand in all directions. And now she's exhaling, and you can see the belly moving in as she completes that exhale. She is not trying to consciously suck the belly inwards. The belly moves in as a result of the exhale. So she's getting that core activation simply because of the exhale. Okay, that's really important. It's not a conscious pushing out and pulling in of the belly. The inhale and exhale create that motion. Now, why are we doing this? Well, I said earlier that we're managing intra-abdominal pressure, but when we breathe and how we breathe impacts our central nervous system. And so when we tap into this, we are actually getting a host of systemic benefits that will help all of our client populations. So some of the benefits for our prenatal clients and members is that they're going to experience fewer pains because their core is well supported. And so they have more structure when they're moving and lifting and carrying and pulling and pushing and all the things that they need to do. When we breathe in this style, we're also improving the fetal growth environment, because these robust inhales are sending a lot of oxygenated blood into the placenta, and the exhale is pulling out those waste products, and we're doing this in a more efficient cycle. So we're actually maximizing baby's growth environment. It's really cool. And then the more we have well developed this core canister system, the easier our labors are going to be, because we're able to push more effectively. We're able to recover more effectively. So it's going to help that process. And then finally, the more well utilized this core canister system is leading up to delivery, we're going to recover more quickly in the postpartum period. So it's really helpful to jumpstart the healing even before we get there. Okay. Now, for all of our members, they're going to be experiencing systemic benefits. When we are breathing in this style, we're going to experience less stress, better immunity, improved digestion, good movement quality, because we're having the parasympathetic nervous system in a higher tone. So parasympathetic is that rest and digest system. And so it's calming the system down, bringing it into better balance, and we're getting a lot of health benefits just from breathing in this style. Now, obviously, we want everyone to breathe in this style, but then the goal is to incorporate it into movement. And the way that we do this is by providing one primary cue that will be very beneficial for almost every movement that you're doing in your Pilates classes. And that cue is to have your members exhale on the effort. So what I mean by that is during a movement, when there is an easier portion and a more difficult portion, you want to have them inhale on the easier portion and then exhale on the effort or the most difficult portion of that movement. So simply if we were to, let's say, use a strap and do pulling straps, right? We're inhaling as we're lengthening, we're exhaling as we're pulling. So the pull is the more challenging portion. That's when we're going to coordinate that exhale. Okay. In the course, we do talk about different breathing styles based on longer held movements or movements in which more than one portion is challenging. We acknowledge that this is one way to breathe, the one recommended way to breathe, but we have to adapt based on the circumstances, of course. Now, in addition, we also can help improve our chances of having pains and injuries with this style of breathing. And part of that is because we are using the core to manage some of the changes that happen to our alignment when we get bigger and bigger. So you can see here that we have an image of someone who is kind of assuming the typical late stage pregnancy position, right? She's got her hands on her low back. This is a great counterbalance to that big load in front with the belly and the growing breasts. So you can see in the front side of the belly on the right, the tissues on the front of belly are getting very stretched and long. And then the tissues in the back side of the body are getting compressed and shortened. So this is creating an imbalance from front to back. In addition, we're also having a shift in our center of gravity, and all of these changes can create movement compensations. And one of the most common ones that I swore was not going to happen to me when I was pregnant is waddling, right? So we're waddling because we have all of this load and we don't have enough strength in the legs to manage this load. So we have a lot of this lateral movement and sway that happens. And that goes back to that graph I showed you, right? So we have that altered strength to weight ratio. But if we have a strong core and we develop it in a specific way, we can help avoid a lot of these compensations. So the idea here is to not only strengthen the core through the breath, but doing it specifically with exercises that help to train and reinforce the body's ability to remain in neutral alignment. So we're trying to get exercises, and there are many in the Pilates repertoire, that want to pull the body out of neutral, but our job is to resist that pull to safely strengthen the core in neutral. So here are a few, just a few, but there are many examples of movements that are trying to pull the body out of neutral, just like the one here on the left. We have someone who's in a tall kneeling position, and the cable, the handle attachment, excuse me, that she's holding, that line of pull wants to take her to her left, but she's resisting that pull and maintaining neutral. So she is resisting getting pulled, and she's training her right side core muscles just by remaining in neutral. Okay, so you can challenge the core in all different planes of motion. You can see in the middle picture there, someone's lying down supine. When the hands go overhead, that pull wants to bring that pelvis in out of neutral. Lumbar extension, right? Low back comes off of the carriage there. We are resisting that pull by maintaining that neutral position. So we're training the core, even though we think of that as an upper body movement or a lat movement, pulling movement, where this is actually a core movement as well. And then you can see here in the right side image, someone is doing a kneeling plank posture. So the plank itself can be done during pregnancy. Let's just put that out there with modifications as we go along in later stages. But the plank itself If we were to go with gravity, we would have the hips sagging down towards the ground, and that would put us into lumbar extension. So resisting that pull by maintaining neutral is a core exercise. So these are all different ways to train the core, even if we've never necessarily thought of them as core specific movements. Now, when we talk about any of these movements, we just want to make sure that we're watching out for this one signal that the movement is going to be a bit too challenging at the moment for these members. And so you can see in this top image, there is this coning in the midline or doming. And the bottom position, bottom image here, we can see this doming down the midline. That I'm going to go back to our discussion of DR or diastasis recti. This is an indicator that the contents of the abdominal cavity are pushing forward onto the abdominal wall, and it's just a little bit too much for the tissue to manage at that time. So what we want to do is have the member regress the challenge, or they can take a rest until the coning is gone. Okay, we can see this in everyone, not just those who are pregnant. Okay, so we're going to show an image a little bit later of someone who is most definitely not pregnant and experiencing some DR. Okay, so the key takeaways here for this myth is that 360 breathing helps manage intra-abdominal pressure and provide systemic benefits for all of our members. We want to incorporate this 360 breathing by focusing on exhaling on the effort. Exercises that train the core to remain in neutral are safe and highly beneficial. And that coning is a key sign to regress or have your member rest. Now, we're going to move on to our myth number 3, which says that we should be avoiding supine after the first trimester. Now, the prior thinking was that being in supine for any length of time would cause something called supine hypotensive syndrome, or SHS. And essentially, this is when the weight of the belly is compressing one of the primary arteries called the vena cava that is bringing blood and oxygen to the fetus. And so if we were to lie on our back with a big belly, this would disrupt that flow of oxygen and blood, and that could put baby at risk. Some of the symptoms that people can experience are dizziness, nausea, an increase in heart rate, or a reduced blood pressure. So the belief was that everyone should avoid supine moves as soon as there is an obvious belly. However, the latest research actually shows that it's really only very long, prolonged periods on your back that can potentially contribute to undesirable outcomes. And we're talking 8 hours at night, okay? However, short durations are perfectly safe and well tolerated by many people on their backs, and this goes well into late pregnancy. However, if someone is symptomatic, you can simply have them change positions and the symptoms will resolve very quickly. So we like to think of this as giving the choice to the member. Let their comfort be the guide. And it also helps to empower them being able to make the choice as opposed to you dictating for them what they should or shouldn't be doing. I know I personally did not have any negative symptoms when I would lay on my back during pregnancy. Brittany, the same thing with her 2 pregnancies. So it really is very individual, and you can empower that member by asking what they would prefer. Now, if you do have members who do get uncomfortable on their backs, you can simply create better conditions for them that are more comfortable. So one option is to create an incline using a wedge, if you have it at your studio, a Bosu ball, mats, rolled up towels, anything that could bring that elevation into the picture there. Another option is to have the member change positions. So rather than doing the move in supine, you could have them in side lying, in tall kneeling, in seated, and so forth. The idea here would be you can still target the same muscle groups or movement pattern, but just in a different trunk orientation. So for this myth here, very simply, supine can be very well tolerated all throughout pregnancy. But if a member is uncomfortable, you can use props to create an incline, or you can have them change positions in order to target similar muscle groups. All right, so we are going to move on to our last myth, which is that prenatal modifications disrupt your class flow. So we used to think that every Pilates move is going to require a modification, and there are simply too many rules to learn for so few members in your classes. Therefore, it's simply too cumbersome, or it's going to take your attention away from the other members in the class, and possibly it's going to be unsafe. However, we believe that if we focus on the elements that members can do, it actually opens you up to many more possibilities. So we just said in the previous myth that most members can lie on their backs if they're comfortable. We said in the beginning that most people can work at higher intensities and it's perfectly safe and well tolerated. And then one thing I want to pay special attention to here is to say that members can perform unloaded moves or stretches outside of neutral. So I said earlier in myth number 2 that when we think of core work, we're trying to strengthen the core while in neutral during strength building exercises. However, it is perfectly safe to allow members to stretch and move in all dimensions. So they can flex, they can rotate, they can extend, they can side bend, they can do all of these things when they are unloaded, because we don't want to create fear around movement. We don't want to create robots either who only move in one dimension, because that is not real life. Okay, so it is perfectly safe to do these things. So it's not about memorizing rules, but simply learning how the body changes throughout pregnancy and applying a simple framework to help you make choices that will accommodate this population. They require many fewer modifications than you may think. And another point that I just want to really drive home is that many of the concepts that we teach apply to all of your members. So thinking back to intra-abdominal pressure, and we looked at those pictures of coning and doming. When we are in the prenatal period, this is a very common sight. However, what about men? You may have members in your classes who are certainly not pregnant, whether that is younger or older women, men of any age, obviously, right? They can experience the same symptoms of that pressure management issue. So we can, in fact, improve the health and the quality of the information and instruction that we're giving to all of our members. So the key takeaways here for our final myth. Pregnant members require fewer modifications than you think, and it's not about memorizing a bunch of rules. We can provide a simple framework for you that will help improve the quality of your instruction and experience for your members of all stripes. Okay. So I hope we have made a convincing case for you that you really can do this, and you can confidently guide these members in your classes. I want to turn it back over to Brittany so she can talk to you a little bit more about some of the details of our education in case you're interested in applying this approach.
I guess it would help if I took myself off mute. That would help. Okay. Can you see my screen? We're good?
Yep.
And I just noticed that I think some questions were coming up in the chat. If you want to, just so we have everything, because I want to make sure we have time for questions at the end. If you want to put them in the Q&A, so you should see a little Q&A section at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You may have to click more, but just make sure to put them in there so we can see all the questions there, because there's some good questions here. So I'm going to share a little bit more about, if you're interested, we tried to pull out some nuggets in what we could cover in an hour, but there's obviously a lot more to share. So the few of the courses we offer that you actually have discounted access to as if you were an IFG member. The first is the course we've been pulling the information from, the pre and postnatal course for Pilates instructors. And this course was really designed, again, for the group Pilates instructor in mind, because we wanted to create an education that created this win-win-win for members, instructors, and studio owners. And I know I didn't give you a lot of my background in the beginning, but I did not come from the fitness industry. I was working in the corporate world, and fitness was a huge passion of mine, especially group fitness. But I had so much trouble getting pregnant that when I finally became pregnant, I was a nervous wreck and went to my instructors desperately seeking guidance and really didn't get any because they were as scared as I was. They were even more afraid to tell me the wrong thing. So instead, really didn't tell me anything at all. And I ended up stopping group fitness. And that wasn't good for me. I lost out on doing the classes I loved and all the benefits they could have provided me. I know it didn't feel good for those instructors, and it wasn't good for all the studios who lost out on my membership fees. So we wanted to change that with this course and give you an education that allows your members to keep doing the classes they love, you to have the confidence and the guidance to be able to guide them through pregnancy, and of course, studios to benefit by retaining members throughout pregnancy, getting them back in sooner postpartum. This is a QR code. I know we'll be sending links with the recording to the pages, but this is a QR code just to the course page. Every course we offer is self-paced online, so you go through it on your own time. This is relatively quick. It's 6 modules, 5 to 7 hours. You have 1 year access to the online learning platform to complete it, so plenty of time. But the materials are available for you to download, so you have lifetime access to those. Every module has a video lesson of Carolyn taking you through the material with visual demonstrations and downloadable text to accommodate those different learning preferences. And at the end, after you've completed the course, you can download our Pilates modifications guide. And this is where you can navigate to the equipment that's relevant for you or mat and find beneficial movement swaps for a lot of the common exercises on that equipment. And so it's just, you just find the one that's relevant for you. And then at the end, of course, you get CECs. If you are certified through any of these organizations, if you don't see your organization listed here, there's an easy petition process. Upon completion, you'll be able to know what to avoid or modify by trimester and why. The why makes all the difference because kind of once you understand that, then it becomes so much easier to know. You're not memorizing a bunch of things. And you'll be able to offer modifications on the fly without disrupting your class flow, help members make informed choices for their bodies because every body is different. You'll be able to spot red flags. The coning example was one of them, and know what to do, and support postpartum members in a safe and effective return to class. We did not create this course alone. We are experts in this population, but we really wanted to make sure we were working with experts in the Pilates space. And from different schools of thought. So we worked with Carrie Macy-Samper, who is the Senior Director of Pilates Education at Equinox, and Georgia Burns, who is a Master Trainer and Educator at the Mindful Movement Center in Toronto. Between these two women, they have a collective over 50 years of experience, both teaching Pilates and developing Pilates education. And then we wanted to work with an instructor who was in the trenches, actually applying the things that we teach. And so Emily Battle, who is a certified Pilates instructor, but also a ProNatal certified coach. So kind of understanding our method. The other important thing about all 3 of these women is they are moms who did Pilates during pregnancy. So they brought their professional expertise and their personal experiences to helping us develop the course. And then before it was ever launched, we always test it with a variety of Pilates instructors. Here's just a few things they said. Vanessa from Club Pilates. I've been teaching for 8 years and have seen little guidance on Pilates and pregnancy beyond the broad stroke rules. This course offered the deeper dive that I needed, and I'm honestly applying the concepts I learned with my pre and postnatal members and all the humans in my classes. And then Brenna from Equinox, this is a must-have for training pregnant Pilates clients with confidence, clarity, and ease. Pilates can be complicated as a student and a teacher, and I appreciated how easy to follow and digestible this course was. The research is up to date, the guidance is actionable, and many of the concepts benefit all participants. And then Janet said, this course gave me so much more confidence in effectively supporting my members through every stage of pregnancy and postpartum recovery. Understanding how the body changes during pregnancy completely shifted the way I approach programming. I loved learning the why behind the guidance and having the quick reference guides to easily refer to in class. So this is just, again, the course info. We try to make it accessible as possible. It's $249. IFG members do get a 15% discount. All of our courses come with payment plans and a money back guarantee. So in the case of this course, you can take the first 2 modules completely risk-free. So at any time during the first 2 modules, you're like, this really isn't the course for me. You email us, you get a full refund, and those materials are yours to keep. The other partnership benefit I did want to cover is discounted access to our pre and postnatal fitness specialist certification. So this is our signature course. And we are proud to say it is now the #1 recommended pre and postnatal fitness certification by the top health clubs and boutique studios in the US. This is our most comprehensive education. So the first course I talked through was about 5 to 7 hours. This is more like 30 to 35 hours. And this is going to teach you how to design specialized training programs. So if you are working more with clients on a one-on-one basis and you want to know like what are the best exercises I can be doing and everything to prepare their bodies for the stresses of pregnancy and childbirth, and how do I take them through a recovery protocol afterward to rebuild the core, all those types of questions. Those are things that are not really applicable in a group setting, but those are concepts we cover in the full certification. This course is not specific to Pilates, but the concepts are absolutely applicable, and we have many Pilates instructors who take this course. Upon completion, you earn your title as a ProNatal certified coach, and you see pretty much maximum CECs through all the organizations here. And both courses are approved through the National Pilates Certification Program. If you're interested in the certification and you're like, I don't know, I'm not sure, I want to learn more, we are hosting a free webinar for that. You can see the registration here. It's actually next Wednesday, and there are 2 time options to choose from, either 11 to 12 or 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. There's the QR code. It's just pronatalfitness.com/webinar. It's free, and that's going to cover more of our approach, more of the training approach that's covered in the certification. So I know we're going to go on to questions now. We covered a lot, and I'm going to leave all of this stuff up as we go through the questions. In addition to the course pages and the webinar page, you'll see our email address if you have any questions, and also our Instagram. Please come say hi to us at ProNatal Fitness. We're always posting. We're posting helpful content, tips, education, inspiration every day. So come say hi. And with that, I think we will go over questions, right? Do I have to?
Yes, we have been getting quite a few questions, and I've been answering some of them in the Q&A, but I would like to address some of them live so we can get the benefit of everybody hearing. And many questions about core moves. Now, unsurprisingly, this is our #1 point of discussion. And a couple big picture concepts, all right, that I think will address some of the questions we've had. We get into great detail in the course about specific movement swaps based on moves that you are doing in your standard Pilates repertoire. We want to make sure that in general, we are keeping the spine in neutral when we are doing strengthening exercises, okay? So we're taking away the things like anything with spinal flexion later in pregnancy. We break this down by trimester, what is appropriate, how do you modify, and then we give you a lot of options, movement swaps, so that you have in your repertoire things you can pull from depending on the circumstance. When we do rotation, we want to keep the spine in neutral. So yes, you can absolutely load someone in rotation as long as their hips and shoulders are moving together, maintaining that net neutral position. Okay. We try to avoid dissociating shoulders and hips in opposite directions. There was a question specifically about prone position. This is, again, one of the ones that we have to modify as the belly starts to develop because it's really not comfortable. I can, just put it there. It's a question of comfort, but obviously after the belly starts to get bigger, like with second trimester, we take away all prone work. And there was a question about side splits. We go over this also in the course when it comes to what are more unstable or moving surfaces. We recommend at least 1 foot on the ground or a non-moving surface if you want to do those sorts of lunge type patterns. Which leads me into a related question about the hormone relaxin and how you need to start thinking about its effects on the connective tissue laxity. So as we are pregnant and going through pregnancy, we have these signals in hormones that are telling us to widen and stretch and be loose so that we can adapt and accommodate this growing baby. That may, not always, but it may lead to a feeling of less stable structures so that when we're on single leg, for example, we may not feel quite as stable. And we have to watch those end ranges, pushing those end ranges, because we may have more mobility as a result of this. I personally did not feel any change to my degree of stability during pregnancy. Some people do. So it's really a case-by-case basis, but you do want to be mindful of the fact that the body is probably a little bit looser than it had been. And so we're going to keep the end ranges relatively contained when we're working with them. Okay, let's see if there's anything
There
else.
was one about loaded flexion. So basically going in, leaning back into the C shape. And I think, as Carolyn mentioned, a lot of these core exercises, yes, a lot of the core exercises when you're loading the core and other strengthening exercises, and it's not in neutral, whether that's flexion, lateral flexion, rotation with dissociation, those are things that modifications are going to become necessary after there's a belly. And that's where we get into the specifics of some of those and a framework to think about that in the course. Was there another one, Carolyn? Did
I don't I think we got to pretty much all the main ones. There was a question about, is an elevated or shoulder bridge safe after the first trimester?
Okay.
And it absolutely is. We love a good bridge around here.
Yes, and it's a great because it targets the glutes, which are so important for supporting the low back and everything, and it keeps the pelvis in stable position. Bridges are great. Yes. There was another question in the chat, Carolyn. I think I saw, was there? Or did it get put in the Q&A? I saw another question in the chat.
Let's see. I got the relaxing question. Somebody mentioned that fear was a huge part of her pregnancy experience and continued into postpartum. So glad the narratives are changing. Yes, we are trying to change the narrative, but we can only do it with you as the instructor who is in front. You are on the ground with this population, so you're the ones who are creating the shift. And so we need your help. We need your partnership.
Yeah, and Carolyn, I think I can, but if you want to answer, how long on the back is appropriate? 15 minutes?
My reading of the evidence is that it all goes based on the member's comfort. Generally speaking, I mean, what can we do that's not laying on the back? Because think about what we're trying to do. We're trying to train this core. We're trying to train this body to be as functional as possible and as transferable with that strength as possible. And in everyday activities, we are not supine for very long periods of time, right? We're upright, we're vertical, and we have to load and move through there. So I might say, yes, it's absolutely fine to be on the back for 15 minutes at a time if the member is comfortable. But let's also start thinking about how we can get them into less supported positions so that they have to create their own stability and strength. Okay, so that's a little food for thought there.
But in general, a lot of your movements are not that long on the back, and this is where you're empowering your members. If they're comfortable, if they're not having symptoms, it's fine. And as Carolyn said, if they are experiencing symptoms like lightheadedness or something like that, you just change positions. They just roll to their side and sit up. So that's a way you can empower them. If they're comfortable, that we're fine. If they're not, that's fine. We have lots of different options. Ooh, Carolyn, Can you address this one? I've been told pregnant clients should not start a new exercise program after getting pregnant. Oh, I was reading it wrong. I thought you should not exercise if they weren't before. I've been told they should not start a new exercise program after getting pregnant. Would you agree with that? If so, how would you recommend working with pregnant clients new to Pilates?
Okay, I think there might be two separate
Yes, I
questions
think
within
there's
the
two.
question.
Yeah, there are 2 points in that one.
Okay, first point. People can absolutely start exercising if they haven't exercised before being pregnant. In fact, that is the best time to get started is now. All of the evidence and the recommendations from the premier body in the United States called ACOG, which stands for American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, they recommend everyone exercise starting before, during, and after pregnancy. You can absolutely start even if you've never exercised before. And Pilates is a great transitional modality in many ways because it is very slow and controlled, and it can develop that internal sense of body position, creating those assistive muscles and strengthening those structures. It would be fantastic to work with this population. Obviously, you're going to go at the rate of progress based on the person's ability to control each of the movements. And as long as they're breathing and you're not seeing any of that doming, right? It is you would work with them just like you would any other client.
I will add to this. With the growth in Pilates and the explosion of all these different studios now, there are a lot of, as you know, variations of Pilates, and there's this Legree method. There's a much more intense version that is being called Pilates now, even though a lot of this it's very different than the classical Pilates. So we have this wide ranging variation now of classes being called Pilates. Some of them are more intense workouts that do require the body to be conditioned a certain way. So would I start, if I've never done a Legree class in my life, would I recommend starting during pregnancy? No, right? And so it kind of does depend on the workout. If there are these really specialized workouts that really requires the body to be conditioned to a certain type of workout, then you want to be careful. And I think depending on your studio's format, if they've never taken that format before, if you offer like an introductory class or something like that, or a beginner level, I would say you'd want to have the member start in there, because the most important thing for your pregnant members and postpartum, which is important for everyone, is that they're doing a lot of these movements with proper form, right? And they know how to listen to their body, and they're comfortable with how the movements are performed, and they know when they're performing things with right form. So that's why it's good to have that familiarity with the format, or at least have an intro class, have them go to an intro class where they can learn that.
Yeah, following up on that, I will say in researching for this Pilates course, I had to take many different formats. And one format, which I will not name, but maybe you can guess, very high intensity. And as someone who I would consider myself relatively fit, it was incredibly difficult to keep up. And I found it quite a marvel to imagine anyone who is pregnant, especially later stages of pregnancy, who could do that successfully and not change positions and compensate and hold their breath and do things that they probably shouldn't be doing. So yes, Brittany is absolutely on the money there. It really depends on the format. If we're talking more traditional Pilates, I would absolutely say that's a great way to get somebody into moving safely. There was one more question here. What are the complete contraindications for diastasis recti? Meaning, what should we not do when training the core? That is a great question. That is a big question. I don't,
Yes.
I don't think I can cover all of the parts of that in this last moment here that we have together. I will say we spent a lot of time talking about that in the course, and I tried to cover some of the big buckets in today's presentation. But that is quite a big discussion. So
either course you take, I mean, especially the certification, you're going to be an expert. Either course you take, you're going to learn a lot about DR. And in the certification, you learn in the postpartum period how to properly assess for it and how to go do the actual full core recovery protocol. But it is a big topic. And so that's not kind of possible to cover all contraindications in our time left that I think, yes, is us.
that we've now gone over, yes.
Awesome. I'm just gonna hop in here, Brittany and Carolyn, and thank you
Yes,
so
do I have to
much
stop
for your
sharing?
time. This has been an incredibly informative session, and I know everyone here has been super appreciative of all of the knowledge. So thank you again so much for your time. I do want to just let everyone know that the post-webinar email will be going out by tomorrow. This is all recorded, so that will be included as well as all of the links to all of the courses that they shared with us today. So that will all be included in that webinar follow-up email. Also, please check your spam folder. So if it doesn't go to your primary folder, please check your spam. It will most likely be in there just in case. But thank you all so much. If you have any more specific questions for Brittany or Carolyn, we will be sharing their email for you to reach out directly. And thank you everyone again.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.